So there's a lot of talk there about being very much in who the person is that we're targeting, that ICP, being really specific around like who are they, what do they do, what are their interests, demographically, firmographics, all of those type of things to really enhance the performance of not just paid activity, but any other activity as well.
Yeah, definitely. And that's like, I know I mentioned Google with it, but it's how Facebook, it's trusting. It's that weird one. You've got to trust them to be able to get the most out of it, but you don't want to trust them too much because at the end of the day, they want to spend as much ad spend as possible. So it is all about that balance, and it's still a lot of testing. You've like I'm always saying, you can't just sort of set and forget and hope that a campaign will work well. You need to test, and also what how you set up something now doesn't necessarily is going to be the best in even 3 months time now, because things are changing so quickly. Like, yeah, it's one that you've got to keep on it, keep making sure things are up to best practice, and yeah, just sort of keep going, keep testing, because that's how you're going to stay ahead.
Yeah.
think,
And I guess, I mean, sorry.
I was going to say, just also at strategic level, I think what people include under paid advertising is going to become broader, because as Sam alluded to, obviously there is Performance Max, which does get you in front of where your audience should be, not necessarily choosing exact placements, but there's also things like advertising on websites like Capterra, which previously is very distinct, probably away from most PPC. People would probably say it's not like a Google Ads or whatever, but it is where your audience are going to come, and leveraging kind of those advertising opportunities is going to strategically become more important, as it's a really good way to kind of get people at the kind of mid, or certainly kind of towards the top of the bottom of the funnel, if that makes sense. And it's that sort of thing you're going to, rather than relying on Google for that, for example, you might then rely on someone like Capterra, or somewhere where you know your audience and your ICP is going to be doing the kind of evaluation stage. So you would move your budget away from Google and into another channel.
Mm-hmm. And how will this change, like as people start to use the LLMs as like their own personal assistants? It's the first thing that they go to. I know that we've had many conversations between us where we go, Dan, why didn't you just go on the chat GPT and ask that question, or things like that? And I know earlier in the year when I was abroad, I was in Venice, and I was just watching some people. They were just on the chat GPT, just asking questions and stuff like that, where they were going when they was traveling. And similarly, Shane, we had a conversation recently where your little one was going and said to you, why don't you just use AI mode as the way of getting that information? Is a lot quicker, it's a lot easier. So how are we, I mean, how are things going to transition into things like, how are we going to understand prompts and things like that going forward, when there's so vast, there's limited tools at this stage, especially as I imagine, or I'm expecting Google to push AI mode as the first thing that you will see going into 26.
I think I think a lot of brands are looking at this, and some of them are feeling a bit nervous. Some of them feel like they kind of need to nail it and get it right first time, but it's not going to be the case. It's evolving so quickly. I think usage of these is growing so quickly as well. There isn't a kind of silver bullet at this point. What I would recommend is a kind of step one: understand how your audience is using tools like ChatGPT, etc. Where does your brand feature for the kinds of things that people would search for, which will be quite similar to what they search for with in terms of SEO and Google, but maybe a bit more conversational. Try and get an idea in terms of who's winning that at the moment. So which of your competitors are showing up, and why, and then what do you need to do to get there yourself. It's a little bit similar to SEO and GEO, so optimizing for tools like ChatGPT, actually leans on SEO quite heavily as well. So there's quite a correlation between how well you perform on SEO and how well you perform on GEO. And I think that's one of the reasons, just to go back to a previous point, that I think it's a big mistake for most brands to cut SEO spend because they see that top of the funnel traffic dropping. The people are still there, they're still searching, they're just using different tools. And if you want to be shown in ChatGPT, etc., then you do need to have good SEO performance. And there's a million other reasons to continue with SEO as well. So I do think that's a mistake. I do think just cutting that budget and putting it into paid or anywhere else would be detrimental.
I think
Sorry, Matt, just to jump onto that, add to that is also AI overviews. Like they pull content from the SERPs, and that doesn't mean you're ranking in positions 1 to 10. They can be from anywhere. If you're not creating that content anymore, you're creating those assets that are going to be focusing on the entire funnel, whether it's a multi-funnel, it's a linear funnel, whatever that may be, it's not going to be pulled in. Therefore, you're missing that brand awareness piece. So we almost need to look at search. Not only is it just purely about commercial driving traffic, but it's that brand awareness piece as well. It's that holistic. And I know that as a company, as a wider industry, we talk about search being holistic and using it in different marketing channels. I think this is really going to push it in that direction. Sorry, Matt.
That's all right. I was just going to reinforce something that Shane said. Obviously, the top of the funnel is still there. It's just on a different channel. And the reality of GEO, or ranking within the LLMs, however you want to kind of say that, it still needs that top of the funnel content on your website to understand your authority within an area, to kind of get that, kind of link you to the right entities. It also likes frequency. So if you just, even if you have all of this information, if you suddenly stop publishing it, in a similar way to Google, after a certain extent, you will start to see the volume of traffic going down, or your visibility within the LLMs will start to decline if you're not constantly creating kind of fresh content. There's different content strategies you'd probably engage, but you still need to be doing it, and but also making use of that content across your whole ecosystem. So email, webinars, kind of your newsletters, all of those sorts of things. It's no longer you're no longer doing SEO content, which is a phrase I hate, but you're doing content to use across your marketing channels and across your ecosystem. But it's still, if you want to appear in ChatGPT, you do need to continue to create that content. And we've looked at it for clients, and essentially the behavior is very similar. So if you create informational content, it does generate a higher volume of traffic from the LLMs. The commercial content usually generates a lower volume of content, but a much higher conversion rate. So the funnel hasn't changed ultimately, but where people are experiencing the funnel has changed.